So a common question we get on the channel are things like, what is a good cost per click? It's a very common metric used in like Facebook advertising or any other native advertising platform. It's very good to understand how, not just what it is, but also what's a good one and how you can leverage it to make better decisions in your business. So let's dive into all about cost per click. Okay, so at the root of it, right, cost per click is pretty simple. It's just the number of clicks you got divided by the amount of money you spent to get those clicks, right? So if I spent $100 in a day and I got 10 clicks, that's a $10 CPC or cost per click. Okay, now we know what it is, but how can you actually use it? Well, it's tough, right? If we look at what is a good cost per click, a common average that gets quoted around a lot for like the entire web in advertising is like $2.50 is an average cost per click. Now we know average doesn't equal good, and also averages are pretty murky, right? That's kind of like knowing, I Googled this, right? Like the average age of living humans is 32 years old. Like it's really only useful if you're tracking a very long data trend and are interested in to see like our ad costs going up or down across the web. So it's pretty murky. But I always hate the answers like, it depends on your niche, but it really does, right? Like if you're a lawyer, right, or kind of going after clients that are big spenders or things like that, your cost per click's probably gonna be pretty high compared to most people. I know in like Google search, for example, there's terms that can determine like, let's say $90 or more per click, right? Imagine the lifetime value that those conversions have to drive from those clicks for that to back out well. And people pay that because they know that a customer clicking on that type of term is going to be worth tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially, right? So they might be spending an exorbitant amount per click compared to most people, but it's all relative to the average price, their conversions, the lifetime value of the customer, and all this kind of stuff. So it's all relative, but it's important to understand how you can actually use that. Let's just explore how cost per click kind of works, right? It's a indicator of a few things. Obviously, it's pretty simple. Clicks divided by money spent is what you get. But it's more than that. It goes hand in hand with click-through rate of the ad, right? If you're looking at the percentage of people clicking based on the impressions you're getting, that's your click-through rate. And so the better your ad creative is, the more engaging the images are, the better the headlines are written and the copy underneath and anything that goes into that ad, the better that performs, the lower your cost per click goes, the further your money's going on those campaigns you're driving, right? So it's hand in hand with click-through rate. It's also hand in hand with the competitiveness of the niche. Going back to those $90 cost CPCs, they're that high because it's very competitive. Those customers searching for those types of terms or those kind of things are very valuable. That's why it's a bid, right? That's why it goes that high. So it's very relative to the competitive nature of the platform you're on or advertising on, the niche you're advertising to, the target audience you're trying to get in front of. All those things factor into how much you're paying per click. So if you're getting a very low CPC, right? Let's say under $1, that would be, in our space, in the direct response space, $1 would be a pretty high cost per click, honestly. It's probably creeping up on some platforms, but let's say you're getting like 10-cent CPCs or even cheaper than that, right? You're probably in a fairly broad target audience. You're probably in you might be in a competitive niche, you might just have really good creatives, and you're kind of able to get a low CPC based on ad engagement and kind of maybe some social leverage there and things like that, and it drives the CPC down. But what is it actually doing? And it's important to understand this because knowing if something's good or bad is relative to your campaign, your baseline. But if you're new, you don't have a baseline to your ad campaigns, it's hard. And that's why mentorship can be so good. When I was running ads a few years ago, right, I was working on Facebook to run ads to a digital weight loss offer. The mentor I was working with was quoting like, hey, you want to be targeting less than 30-cent CPCs, really less than 10 cents if you can do it. The converting campaigns I got were around a 9-cent CPC on Facebook, which seems pretty low to Facebook now, but we're able to do it because we were targeting a very broad niche with very engaging image copy and really just trying to drive interest clicks to the warm-up campaign and landers and eventually to the offer. So we were just trying to optimize for the best click-through rate we could to get a very low CPC. Now the CPC, again, is just a metric of how far our dollars are going on those campaigns to actually generate those clicks. But let's dig into like an example, right? If you've got a campaign rolling at say 30-cent CPCs and it's been performing well, you're profitable on it, all of a sudden you start to see CPCs climb up and creep up, what are you gonna do with that information? Right, and that's kind of where this decision-making process of cost per click comes into play. If you see CPC creeping up, the first thing I would do is look at my click-through rate. Is that holding steady or is that diminishing? If the click-through rate of the campaigns is diminishing and CPC is going up, it's probably because my ad creative or the audience is getting fatigued by that type of creative, right? Maybe it's been scaled and everyone's seen it. Maybe another affiliate has kind of copied my ad creative and it's kind of disseminating where I'm not actually doing it, but it's getting out to the marketplace in general and reducing the effectiveness of it. Maybe my target audience was too narrow. Okay, if it's too narrow, I might have fatigued it much faster than if I was going very broad, right? So maybe I just need to kind of duplicate my campaign to a new target segment or niche or whatever it might be, or traffic source. And maybe CPC will come down, click-through rates will hold steady, and I'm back to the races and I'm more profitable, right? So that's what I started asking. If click-through rates are still good and it doesn't look like it's a target audience issue, but CPC is still creeping up, I'll start asking the affiliate managers I'm working with on the offer. I start asking my colleagues or mentors, like, hey, are you seeing CPCs creeping up? What's kind of happening here? This type of chatter happens a lot in the different Facebook groups I'm in and just across different affiliates chatting with each other. It's like, yeah, man, last week was brutal. CPCs went through the roof. Or no, like I'm fine. Like I don't know what's going on with you, right? So it can help you start to problem solve where the issue might be. And let's go into story time for a second here. It's important to kind of look at the whole ecosystem sometimes, because that can often dictate CPC in a big way. So if we go to the summer of 2020, there's a lot of social unrest. Facebook was under a lot of scrutiny for kind of disseminating fake news or not locking down on some like racist kind of terms and things like that. And some big ad buyers on Facebook, big brands, essentially boycotted Facebook and pulled their ad spend off of Facebook. Now, what does that do? It creates a vacuum. It creates less demand for those spots. So it drives the cost of running ads on Facebook down, right? There's less people paying for it, so it drives it down. It's a supply and demand, kind of invisible hand theory coming into play here. When that starts happening, everyone's campaigns who were still running on Facebook all of a sudden got cheaper, right? It was cheaper to get in front of these same target audiences because you didn't have other brands trying to pay to get in front of that same audience, right? Because I might be interested in a whole bunch of things. I've got a baby, I like to golf, there's all kinds of things I might be interested in getting ads for on Facebook. If all of a sudden big brands stop pushing ads in front of me, there's more room for other people to do it. So what we saw in the summer is when scale goes down in the industry, it actually went up because cost per clicks is much cheaper to get clicks and campaigns were much more profitable. But what happened towards the tail end of 2020? The election came into play in a big way, right? So towards late summer, early fall, we started to see political spending on Facebook start to ramp up in a big way. And that drove competitive nature way back up. The big brands that had boycotted came back on. And we also started, as you got into Q4, you got into the big e-com push for the holiday spending, right? So that drove the competitiveness of Facebook as a platform way up. You had the election, you had the boycott ending, and you had e-com spending big money for the holiday shopping sprees, right? So you've had three big things pushing spend back up, and everyone's CPCs started getting hammered and campaigns started getting less profitable or negative, and so scale went down, right? And then it's come Q1, the holiday spree's over in 2021, right? Like it's not a big e-com push anymore. The political ad spends were over, except for like Georgia, right? And so now all of a sudden CPCs are getting cheaper again. So it's this ebb and flow that kind of determines what CPCs might be. Not with just Facebook, but you could apply that to most other kind of networks too, as you're seeing this ebb and flow of CPCs go up and down. Now it's just useful to understand that because it's not always in your control what's happening to CPC. It's not like the offer, right? The offer doesn't really determine CPC. It's more the network you're on and your campaign overall. So if it's good or not is relative to, are you getting a positive return on ad spend with the commission you're making or with the customer you're acquiring? If so, or even if you're break even, it might be a good CPC, right? And it's really a risk tolerance on your end of how much margin you need. If you need 50% return on ad spend for every dollar you spend, you make $1.50, right? You might be much more susceptible to swings in CPC than someone who's comfortable with, say, making 10 cents for every dollar they spend, or $1.10 for every dollar they spend. Someone who can operate on a 10-cent margin versus a 50% margin is going to be able to withstand those ebbs and flows to a much greater capacity and keep spend happening at a higher volume than someone who needs a big return for every dollar they're putting in. So again, it's relative to the commission you're finding. What you might see is shoot, I'm getting hit up, my CPCs are increasing, the cost to run ads on these platforms is increasing. In whatever given moment, you might need to go find an offer that's similar to the one you're promoting, but pays you more. Or you might need to go to that offer owner and go hey, I'm getting squeezed on margin right now. CPCs are going up. Can you give me a higher commission rate, right? I need X many more dollars for every sale I'm getting so I can be more profitable based on the CPC and this ad spend that's happening right now. And those are the kind of the high level conversations start to happen as you understand what all these data metrics do, right? So to recap here, what is a good CPC is dependent on, are you getting a positive ROAS or return on ad spend with that CPC? So super relative. It's going to be all over the place. I've heard of people getting essentially free clicks, right? Fractions of a penny for clicks from Snapchat when Snapchat was rolling out their ad platform, or Pinterest, right? When these new platforms unveil an ad platform, clicks can be insanely cheap. Can CTR be too low? Maybe, honestly. I've seen, that sounds stupid, right? But bear with me. If CPC is a relation to click-through rate, I've seen people think that they're doing great and the offer that they're pushing to is just converting really bad. But what they're doing is they're getting a really high click-through rate. Let's say an average is, I don't know, let's just say 30%. They might be getting a 70% or 50% click-through rate, way above average or something. It's what's happening here? Now 30% is actually probably pretty high. Well, they might be driving interest-based clicks, right? So they're getting a high volume of clicks. It's driving their CPC down. It looks great, but it's not converting. Well, because they're not framing the offer correctly with that ad campaign. And so it's driving interest-based. I've seen that happen with even Landers. Someone's saying, hey, learn more. And they're sending someone to a buy page, to an order page. And it looks like the order form isn't converting at all, which it isn't technically, right? You're getting a high volume of clicks, low volume of orders, but really you're just framing the offer poorly, right? So you kind of need to be looking at where you're warming things up. So can you have too low of a CPC? Not really, but it might just be a lagging indicator with click-through rates that your framing might be wrong or something like that. So these are all ways to look at CPC and cost per click and understand how it operates in your overall spend and kind of as a metric. Chat with your mentors, chat with the other affiliates, figure out what is a good CPC for the niche you're running in. You can ask the offer owners, hey, what are other people getting? What are other affiliates getting for their cost per click with this demographic you're giving me with this type of campaign? So just ask questions, figure out what's good and what's a decent baseline to shoot for. But at the end of the day, it's going to be largely determined by your traffic, your campaigns, your baselines, and your targeting on what kind of results you're getting with that. So as long as you're profitable, you're in the money and you're good. So don't worry too much about what the actual CPC is. Use it as an indicator of questions to ask and what to dig into, and just use it as a threshold for your margin and understanding how that plays together. Questions? I'm sure you got them. This is kind of a meaty topic when you get into the what ifs and all this kind of stuff. Leave a comment below if you want to dig further into it. We can chat. Leave a like and subscribe if you want to check out more videos from us every week. And happy skating.